This video was made possible with the help of Game Toppers. Upgrade your gaming experience with a Game Topper.
Hello chaps and chapettes, and welcome to this final review for the board game version of Skyrim, the adventure game, which I will try my darndest not to repeat what I've already said in my first impressions video, but give you as much compact information without repeating myself too much about, number one, everything in the game, as well as adding on my own personal experiences that I've had. And then I will explain to you why Skyrim is a board game that everybody So let's cut to the chase and start off right away by saying that Skyrim is a board game that every Skyrim fan who wants to have that board game experience of the video game that they love but skimmed down and very repetitive should enjoy. Hopefully that didn't sound too depressing and off-putting. So my experience with Skyrim is I have played 9 sessions. 5 of them have been solo, so I played campaign 1, Chapter 1, 2, 3, Campaign 2, Chapter 1 and 2. And then I've played 4 times as 2 players. My first playing with the game was with my friend Guillaume, and we were learning the rules as we went. And the second 2, because I knew the game kind of inside out, I played with my daughter, and they've been going swimmingly well, but they are extremely long. So I'm going to say on average that I spent 2 to 3 hours per session. 9 times 3, 9, 8 and 27. That's 27 hours of gameplay that I have experienced, but maybe not that much due to the fact that a lot of that beginning time was spent in the rulebook, back and forthing, checking this, because the situation would come up and it would go, okay, how do I resolve this? So let's start with a quick overview of the game and how it works. Starting with the setup, where players will take a character, one of 6 from the base game, and I'm talking only about the base game because I don't own any of the expansions. And you will then have a few items. You'll have a level of stamina, a level of health, and a level of magicka. You will pick a scenario, or you will do the campaign, one scenario after the next after the next. There is also the possibility to do free roam, so you could just go and just build a deck and just do whatever you want, wherever you want. I haven't experienced this, so I can't talk about that too much. Once this is done, you'll select a quest card, which will be distributed between the players, so that each player will have their own kind of quest in a way, so their own kind of story. And then there will also be a main quest card as well, which may have some special rules which lead this scenario. So like in scenario 1, campaign 1, sorry, chapter 2, Ulfric is going to go across the board, and on the back of the card it tells you which zones he goes to and when that actually happens, when he activates. And just on a side note, setup is pretty easy for this game. It can be pretty quick to put the game onto the table due to the fact that the insert has a really nice in tray. The cards are probably the only thing that is going to be the time consuming thing at the beginning, depending if you're playing one chapter after another, then there's no problems. But if you're just jumping in fresh and changing chapters and changing scenarios, then it can be a bit cumbersome sorting out the cards. So a game turn. Basically, a game turn works as so. Players draw an event card, then players will then discuss between themselves and move their characters around the world, and then they will each perform an action individually wherever they are. The missions or the objectives for each player and the general overall one give you a nice bit of flavor text about what's going on in the story. Can I remember what's going on in the story? Not really much, because it didn't really tap any kind of emotions, but I know roughly kind of what's going on in the world. So the event cards are a deck of cards which is set up depending on the scenario, and they each have a little bit of text on them explaining what's going on and what kind of effect is going to take place. Now, some of these event cards are active events, which will go onto an active event slot on the board, and they will remain active until another one replaces them. So they might be bad weather, or they might be a case of there's a special sale on in Riften on stolen goods, and this will remain in play, as I said, until it's replaced, or the card itself says it gets removed due to the fact that someone has used it. There is one that says there's steal a horse, and so you have to go to Windhelm, I think it is, steal a horse, and then once that's done, that's gone, it's removed. There are also some event cards which are just one-shots, which just say this happens and that's it, and so you carry out those actions. And then there are some which are world quests. Now, during your game you can have 4 world quests active at a time. Now, the world quests can also have threat tokens added to them as well. I'll go into threat tokens a bit later. But world quests are quests that anybody can do at the table, and you'll mark where these world quests are by placing these little grey arrows which get completely lost on the map, and you forget why they're there and where they are. And you'll be going back time and time again, because you're going to be concentrating on your personal quests basically a lot of the time, and the world quests are just like on the side. But sometimes these world quests can be quite important and could be quite advantageous to you, because completing them successfully might add a different event card into the event deck. So with the event card done, you'll also have to add some threat tokens, which is on the bottom of these event cards. Now, the threat tokens are kind of like a counter. They kind of keep the game rolling, and they kind of give some kind of threat, for a better term of word. As I just mentioned, threat tokens can go onto the world quests. If they have too many, and they are indicated on a number on each card, then these world quests will fail, and you will have to carry out the negative effects of those quests. The same can be done with your personal quests or your main quest. These too can hold threat tokens, which is quite useful, because if you are going to do one of your little quests on your next turn, you can say, well, I'll take the threat and then place it on your card, and then as soon as you do it on your turn, you remove that card and you also remove that threat. Therefore, nothing is really changed in the world. And the third place where threat tokens can go is on the strongholds. Now, you'll mark these. Again, they will turn invisible as soon as you add them onto the board, but they will close down the markets in each stronghold. Adding a second one to a stronghold will actually close the stronghold, which means that you will have to pay 5 sesterces, yeah, to open up the stronghold again. But if there's a third threat token on the same stronghold, that means that every time you draw an event card, you'll have to add an additional threat token somewhere for each stronghold, which has 3 tokens on it. And the only way to get rid of these is to actually go to the stronghold and pay 5 sesterces to remove one. And you can only do that once per turn. So if there are 2 players actually in a stronghold, both of them can spend 5 sesterces to remove a threat token each. So this puts a big pressure on the players due to the fact that, number one, you're going to need the markets, because you're going to go, this is Skyrim, you're going to go around and kill stuff, collect loot. You're going to want to sell stuff which is not very good for you. You're going to want to collect, buy stuff which is going to be good for you, and you need a market. Again, having a stronghold which is closed is no good to you. You really need to have easy access, because you can't otherwise end your turn on a stronghold if it's closed. You have to just like stand next to it. The great thing about these strongholds is they each have their own unique traits. Some sell this, but others don't. And also there are different prices for the resources, or different prices for when you sell stuff, which is a bonus. You can always find a good stronghold which you can go to regularly, maybe in the center of the board, which will give you, you know, an extra sesterce every time you sell something, which is bonus. And again, you need these strongholds to do other adventuring stuff like you do in Skyrim. You can build stuff, you can create armor, you can create potions, but only up to a certain level. So you basically have the basics, so like fur armor and steel swords. You can't actually build any ebony or glass weapons of any sort, or you have to find them. And as you can tell by my voice, that's a bit disappointing. And again, the potions, you can't find an invisibility potion, you can't make one either. You just got your basic potions which restore your stamina, health and magicka, which, you know, in all fairness, this is a small board game experience of a very, very big video game, so you know, you have to take that into account. So basically there is a kind of generic shop where you can buy anything from this basic generic deck, and you can also build stuff from this generic deck if you have the resources. And after a while that does become a little bit tedious, because after a while you know everything that's there, and once you start getting to a certain level, a lot of that stuff is no good for you, and you're going to want more advanced stuff, and that's when you need to go to the dungeons and kill stuff. But there are 3 other stores which are apt to each of the 3 types of, I don't know if you call them factions, but there's one that's built to warriors, so it's all strength related. You have one which is built towards thieves, which is all sneak related, and then you have one towards the magicians. Now, not all of these shops are available in each strongholds. Some of them are missing, and the strange thing about accessing these shops is you have to pay 1 sesterce to reveal the first card from a deck, because these shops are just decks of cards. If you don't like the first item, you spend another sesterce to reveal the second card. Now again, you might have a special power, like you might have the speech ability, which means that the first time you reveal 2 cards, which is a bonus. But having to pay 1 sesterce to see what item is in the deck, and then having to spend maybe 6 to 8 sesterce to buy the item itself, which is, they are quite powerful. They're more powerful than the original first set of cards. It can be quite expensive and unfulfilling and unrewarding, especially if you can't see anything which is good enough for you. So there's a bizarre mechanic in what could have been a more interesting mechanic. So yeah, I was talking about threat, wasn't I? So yeah, threat closes down strongholds and can end the game pretty quickly if there's too much threat in the world. So after the event card is done, I've babbled long enough about that, there is the player's turn, and the players can discuss where they want to do, what they want to do and where they want to go, and then eventually they will move. Normal moving is 4 spaces. That's how far you can move per day, so to say. Unless you have horse, which gives you an extra 1, which doesn't really seem worth the 10 sesterce you spend for it. So that's a good thing. All the players can talk, and then they all move at the same time. And then, one by one, starting with the start player, they will perform the actions depending on the location that they're at. Let's talk about those locations. So I'll continue with the strongholds, because we've talked quite a lot about the shops and the crafting and everything. The other things you can do in the strongholds is you can encounter people in the world of Skyrim, in the universe. You basically reveal a card, it'll have a bit of flavored text telling you so-and-so and did this, and the only one that I do remember mostly is the one where someone's had all their clothes stolen. So again, these are pretty unmemorable events. They will give you a resource of your choice, and then you have a skill test. And the skill tests are basically you roll 3 dice on its basics, and then you're looking for X amount of results. And there will normally be a push or luck kind of mechanism where you spend a resource of one of the 3 types. So it's either or soul gems, why am I blank? Herbs. Yeah, that's the 3 resources. But there are also some skill tests which will allow you to spend money. They're normally like bribery ones. And there are also ones that will let you burn experience points as well, just to roll 1 extra dice. And you're trying to get these results so you get a good benefit. And then a lot of these characters will actually give you a quest afterwards. Even if you fail this skill test of like building a piece of armor for them or stealing back their clothes, even if you fail, you get this quest. They say, all right, and then, oh, that's okay, don't worry too much. Let's do, go and get this, go there and do that. And so you'll place a marker onto the board and you'll have to go there and do another quest and you draw another card. And this is interesting. You're building up your character and you're doing stuff and you're getting around and you've got another card to put threat on. Bonus. So yeah, that's the things you can do in a stronghold. Build stuff, buy stuff, sell stuff, create stuff, and meet someone. But if you have a quest in a stronghold, you can't meet someone. You have to do your quest. Oh, you don't have to do your quest. You could spend 2 turns in the stronghold. 1 turn, meet someone and buy and sell stuff. And then also, second turn, do your quest. There are also these wilderness spaces where you will encounter someone else that you may wish to encounter. So you draw a card, you do the same kind of thing. You're given a resource, you do a skill test, they give you a quest, you go and do it. Now you can only have 2 personal quests and 1 main quest. So this is a chance to get rid of a quest that you don't like, especially if you don't have the skills or you don't think you're going to have a good chance at rolling the results that they want. So that's the wilderness spaces, and they are normally the spaces where roaming monsters will spawn, but we'll get back to roaming monsters a bit later. And then there are the 5 other different types of spaces, like the mine and the cave and the tomb, and the dwemer, the mine cave house thingies. If you end your turn there, you can go and fight some monsters to get some loot. Now each of these are leveled at different levels of creature, and each creature gets more and more powerful. So the creatures are like the weakest in the game, whereas the dwarven monsters are a bit more harder. The mechanical spiders and guardians that they have. And each scenario campaign will have its own prerequisite of what creatures are in each of those locations. And so you will draw these creatures face down and reveal one by one. There may be some time later in the game where you'll be fighting 2 of these at the same time, but you'll be fighting mainly just 1 at a time. Now the combat system is really interesting because, as I said, you'll reveal 1 card and you'll have to fight that creature. You always have the possibility at the beginning of your combat to sneak up on them and do a backstab of some sort and do some instant damage. Now some creatures are harder to sneak up on, and some creatures have this ambush ability which allow them to attack you before you attack them. So you basically do have to sneak to attack them before they attack you. So if you do a successful sneak, they don't ambush you, but if you fail your sneak or you don't sneak, they ambush you and get a free attack in. So you have to basically kind of mainly have a sneak skill or someone in your party that's good at sneaking, so you can get that free jab in before the fight kicks off. Fights are always kind of tense, unless you are level 27 or something like that. Then let's just roll the dice. They're dead. But early on in the game, they are very tense and very interesting, where you will roll 1 dice and that dice will dictate what your enemy is going to do. And then you have a choice of deciding what you want to do. You could decide that this attack is too powerful and you don't want to lose X amount of health or magicka or stamina. You prefer to just spend 1 stamina to see if you can dodge, evade, block, whatever skill that you have to negate that attack entirely. You'll miss a turn, but you won't get too much damage. You'll just lose a stamina. If you think you can take the hit, especially if you've got armor which corresponds to their attack, because they might be attacking with magic, they might be attacking with heavy, and they might be attacking lightly. And they're all color coordinated to make it easy for you to see, and this is fantastic. So if you think that your armor is going to protect you from their hit, they're going to do 4 heavy damage on you, and you've got an armor class of 5 heavy damage, so you're wearing heavy armor, you're going to absorb that hit. The only thing is you're going to lose a bit of stamina because you're kind of like pushed back a bit by the attack, which is thematic, works, interesting, gives you something to think about. So once you've decided what you're going to do, if you're going to avoid this damage or you're going to take this damage and then attack them, then you can roll for your attack. You'll check your weapon, you'll see what results you need, you'll use any bonuses that you have, you roll the dice, and if you succeed, you do the damage as indicated. It might be magical damage, light armor damage, or heavy armor damage. So this is really nice. So if your creature only has light armor, and you can decide, oh, you know what, my weapon can do light armor and heavy armor damage, you can choose to do heavy armor damage, because that will go straight through the light armor. If you do light armor against light armor, whatever their number is going to negate the damage that you do. And again, the kind of same thing applies to the stamina thing that I mentioned earlier. So if they have a light armor class of 4 and you do an attack of 3, that's not going to do any damage to them, but they will be pushed back, and so they would lose 1 point from their light armor. So now they have 3, and then you'll have to do that again to knock it down to 2, and then if you do it again, you will eventually kill them. So there's a lot of dice rolling going on in combat back and forth. Sometimes you'll roll a result for the monster and it won't correspond to any of their symbols, which means that they don't do anything. This is a good time for you to have a rest maybe, or to conjure up a monster, and as I said, maybe gain some health and stamina. This is always fun and always that nice kind of risk taking. There's been some really kind of like, oh my god, I would run away with you if I were you. You only got 1 point of life left, 1 point of health left, and this monster has still got 4 points of armor class. Run away. And I've seen situations where it's like, no, I'm not going to run away. I'm going to do this turn, and then that the next turn, and things have paid off, or things haven't paid off. And it's fun, it's interesting, it's exhilarating. Once a monster has been eliminated, you get a chance to rest, you regain your magicka, you regain your stamina, but you don't regain your health. Unless you have some kind of special enchanted armor. Talking about enchantments, that's another thing that you can do in a town. You can upgrade or enchant your equipment, and it requires resources of ore or soul gems to do so. And this is kind of luck of the draw. Again, if you draw a card and you don't like it, you can spend an extra resource to draw another card, and then you can equip it. Now this is nice because you can get some really interesting combinations of enchantments on your clothing. So you could have heavy armor that is muffled, which means normally you can't sneak with heavy armor, but all of a sudden you can. Yeah, again, the upgrades can give you additional defenses against different armor types, or it can give you boosts in your attack damage. But it is kind of hit and miss because you're drawing from a deck of cards, and sometimes you might have shuffled them badly and you draw the same card 3 times because there are multiples of the same card in the deck. So moving on to the next enemy, you just reveal them and then you do the same thing. If you clear out the dungeon entirely, you get an extra bonus treasure. Now each enemy that you kill may give you resources, or may give you money, or definitely give you XP. You might even find some traps as well, which can be lockpicked, which is the same kind of thing as sneaking, when it could have been something else. Depending on your level as well of your character, some of the monsters that you encounter may be removed from the game, which means that this deck of monster cards gets harder. Yes, at the beginning of the game, you're going to sort these monsters card decks into numerical order, starting with the easy ones and finishing with the hard ones. If you've not killed the monsters, you've knocked them out, so to speak, and your level's not that high, these monsters go back onto the top of the deck and they get mixed up with a few other cards, and so they will come back. And as I said, as you level up, your character will kill these monsters and remove them from the game entirely, which can be a deciding factor in how you play the game, because if you have someone that goes ahead and levels up a lot, where someone's trailing behind, they're going to have trouble with these tougher monsters which have been left behind in the dungeons. So the cooperative side of the game really comes out there. Again, you can do these dungeons together, so you don't have to do them alone. You each take a turn each, having a hack and being hacked at. Again, as I said, you can summon creatures which can go in front of you and they will attack your enemy as well. And again, your enemies can summon creatures as well which can attack you. So each time you roll a dice for the enemy, and you roll a dice for your summoned creature, and if you're lucky enough to have a follower, you'll roll the dice for the follower. And all of this will happen before you take any damage from the enemy and before you do your attack. And I like this. This does help, and again comes into some of the decision making of how you're fighting, what your style is, if you're going to equip something or not, because again, if you're in the middle of a battle and you think your magic is not working that well, and you can just get rid of your magic spending a stamina just to swap and put a sword into your hand. And that's the dungeons, that's the crux of the game. There are some roaming monsters that will pop up due to the fact of event cards. These basically act as like door stops, as you're wandering around the world. You can go into a space with a wandering monster, but you will have to fight it to be able to continue moving. These wandering monsters have different roles during the course of the game. Some of them will move towards the player and try to corner them and attack them. Some of them will move to the strongholds and add threat to that stronghold before respawning maybe later on in the game. Another nice thing about the wandering monsters is they are double-sided little tokens. Although the tokens, they get lost on the board, you can't see where they are. So when they got to move, it's like, where are they? They're double-sided, so they have like two possibilities. So they could be a tough vampire or they could be a weak vampire. You don't get to choose. The cup of tea does. And there you have, I've mixed everything up that I was going to talk about individually. Combat, exploring, the gameplay, it's all mixed up in there, the shopping. So let's talk about the story. The story, as I said, is there. It's got Skyrim-y names, but I've already forgotten it. And I've played this game a shed load. But the story works well with this deck mechanism, the cards. Basically, some cards will be removed and you'll never encounter them. Some cards you will see maybe more regularly if you keep playing the game. But again, you will not see every card during the course of the game. There are some choose your own adventure elements where you read a bit of text, you do a test, or you do a quest or something, kill a monster, and then you'll have a decision to make. Go left or go right. Go and search for this person or go and search for that person. I don't see them making much difference to the world, but they may do. Again, I've played this a lot and I haven't really felt the knock-on effect. Although there is a knock-on effect between Campaign 1 and Campaign 2. Whereas Campaign 1, you'll have to try and protect and save as many blades as you can. Because what will happen is in Campaign 2, those blades come into play. And each of these cards that you've removed at the beginning of the game, there's about 12 of them, each contains to a blade. And some of them are followers, some of them are events, some of them are other things. And so these cards will go into the corresponding deck and make them up in your Campaign 2. But as I said, these choose your own adventure things, where you go left or you go right, don't seem to change much of the main story, because it just seems like you start here, you can go there or there, and then you can go there or there or there or there, and then everything just comes back to the point at the end. And at the end, it's either a case of you fail or you succeed. There's no in between. There's no you succeed but, or you succeed and. There's just fail, succeed. Now there are some cards in this deck which don't make sense. I've encountered a few where it's like you've had to refer to the rulebook, because it's like, well, what do I do here? There's some characters that you can meet in the stronghold and they're trainers and they tell you to do this, this and this, and it doesn't make sense to you because you haven't been explained how to do this and if this is correct. And then, especially if you're like me and you're a big Skyrim player, that you go, that's not thematically right. There are other things which, there's a big skill test card of 6 different skills. What do you do? I now know the answer, but I had to get the designer to tell me what the answer is. I mean, should that be the case? Should the rulebook be better? Should we have been prepared for this? The crux of the game is basically move and roll dice either in a skill test or in combat, which are basically the same thing. You're trying to get X amount of results with the dice that you have, and you'll be maybe having leveled up and learned some skills which will give you extra dice, or you may have equipment that give you extra dice which will help you do that skill. They don't really kind of feel like Skyrim. You know, when you are a very good alchemist, you can make very good potions. In this, you just make the basic potions, and whenever you do a test, which is an alchemy based test, you're just getting an extra dice or two. Yes, I'm bitching about this game, but at the same time, it does feel like Skyrim. It does remind me a lot about Skyrim. There's some really good parts. The main part in particular is the leveling of the character. Building your character up from nothing, it feels fulfilling. It feels good. It feels like Skyrim, and choosing which skill that you want, and then choosing where to invest your leveling up, because each time you level up, you don't only just get a skill, you're going to be able to increase your health or your stamina or your magicka by 1. Now, there's a kind of a default for this game in that respect, because if you just keep investing in stamina all the time, for example, your stamina level you'll see on your sheet will go up and up and up, but also the monsters that you encounter you'll be able to remove from the game. As you get these stats higher and higher, any monsters which are level 0 will be removed from the game when you fight them. And then any monsters that are level 1 will be removed from the game as you fight them. And eventually you just have high level monsters to fight. Now if you advance and another player doesn't, this is going to cause problems for the other player, because they won't be able to combat successfully unless you're with them to try and get to the same level. So you basically got to try and just level up bit by bit each row as it goes, kind of Tetris style. Occasionally you may get an item which all of a sudden just boosts your magicka by 2, and then you got no choice. You either wear it and have a +2 on magicka, or you don't wear it and don't kind of get those benefits. But yeah, as the game goes on, you're going to get bigger, better, powerful equipment. Unfortunately, you can't make it. Unfortunately, you will have to fight the bigger monsters to get this bigger and better equipment. But that's Skyrim for you. There are a bucket load of cards in the game. You won't see them all on your first playthrough. In fact, you know, we've been playing so far and we've got through the first 2 chapters, and there's still all of that to go. So yeah, you're not going to see everything. Things are going to be removed from the game. So when you go in a different path, that card might be removed, and when this happens, that might be removed. As I said, there's a big chunk. I might have said it, but there's a big chunk of cards which are your blades. If you save them in the first campaign, they come into the game. If you don't save them, they die and they're removed from the game. Very kind of like legendary style. But the good thing about it is when you restart the campaign, you put all the cards back and you can replay it, which is great. But yeah, these cards will then come into play in another campaign if you successfully save them, and so you will see them or you might not see them. The card art is nice. Not enough monsters. There should be more monsters, because it just gets repetitive when you're fighting the same skeever bear and mud crab all the time just to get XP, so you can eliminate them to get to the next things. And again, shuffling not so many cards back into the deck is not fun. But the good thing is, if you become legendary and after you've leveled up enough, you've leveled up 8 times, 9 times, you become legendary, and there all the monsters in the deck get mixed together. So when you fight, you don't know what you're going to get. You might get a level 4 and then a level 7 and then a level 5. And some of them might be together, and it's fun. Now, after all the playing that I've had, majority of that time was spent reading the rulebook or referencing the rulebook to look for things as problems arise or questions arise. You know, you got A and then B and then C, and then what happens if D comes in with A? What happens there? What's the chemistry mix there? And then what happens if F joins B and C? And it's like, that's when you need to look in the rulebook. And unfortunately, the rulebook is, you know, it's condensed and everything is there, but finding it can sometimes be a nightmare and a problem. This is a professionally produced rulebook with no examples or help for new players or new people to board games like this. And I mean, there may be some Skyrim players out there that see this is a Skyrim game and not have a good education on board games, and therefore be a bit lost and have to wait for someone to do a video. And in fact, from the board game geek threads that I've been reading about questions, it seems like some people haven't read the rulebook and they're just watching videos which are already existing, and there might have been some that have been taught wrong, or they're just rules that they've read in the rulebook and forgotten about because it's got lost in all the information which is in there. And it's a shame, because this game should be moving from the get-go, and yet it doesn't. It's very stagnant, slow crawl as you learn the game. And in fact, when I taught my daughter, she picked it up pretty quick because I knew the rules kind of inside out, because I've been playing for tens of hours already before I was teaching her. So I was able to explain to her pretty quickly how to play the game. The only thing I had to spend about 10 minutes with is the player board and what everything does. and then we were away. Showed her movement, showed her combat, showed her skill tests, done. Some of the concerns that I do have with the strategy of the game is it does feel that you need to have a sneaky person in your team, and you need to have a sword and a shield, or a sword and magic. I did try to play as an Ultima and just use magic alone, and that didn't work. My daughter with her Khajiit bandit sneak thief was zooming ahead, doing all these skill tests, picking up all these resources, killing all these monsters, willy-nilly, zooming ahead of me with levels, while I was struggling behind, trying to find good magic that I could use to fight monsters with. And it was a case of, you know, I'm going to give up after the first chapter, because I was dragging behind. My missions weren't being completed. I didn't have the skills that I needed to complete other quests. I didn't have enough force to kill the simplest of creatures with my spells, and I had to run away because I didn't want to push my luck with having another threat added to the game. I should have, but I didn't, and those kind of things kind of stagnated my character build as it was. But you know, that might have been just my playing style. Things did turn around as soon as I put a sword in one hand, and I was able to hack my way through some things and change my armor from your novice robes to a light armor. And then luckily, a good thing about that is my daughter, who had lots of money, lots of resources, kept finding these really A-grade treasures. When we meet up, she would just give some of them to me. And so I was able to catch up to her level pretty quickly in the second chapter. But as I said, it felt like I couldn't progress as I wanted to progress as a mage. Let's click on to saving. So when you finish a chapter, you might want to continue, and so you might want to just leave the game on the table, as we do, or you might want to put it into the save boxes. Now, doing this is practical, but not practical at the same time. There are things like items that you have. If you've upgraded your sword and made it more powerful at swinging, but also enchanted it with an enchantment, and then you put these cards into your save game box, when you take them back out, you don't remember which one is which. So you're going to need to take a photograph of your character and everything. Again, with the resources, these tokens that they have for the resources are double-sided. So one of them says nothing and one of them says 3. So you've either got 1 or 3 of a resource. So just imagine you put a handful of tokens in your box, and then you take them out, and it's like, well, how many do I have? Do I have 3? Do I have 5? Or do I have 7? Or do I have 9? Yeah, there's some minor quibbles with the save system. Again, when you put your wandering monsters into the world box, where do they go when you put them back out? You just have to put them generically anywhere on one of the wilderness spaces. Again, with your statistics for your character, I mean, you may have leveled up 4 times, which means that you can change basically your character. So you can level up your stamina twice, your magicka once, and your health once. Or whereas before it was a bit different. It was your magicka twice and 1/1 for the others. So I think I've hit everything that I want to talk about in regards to Skyrim. It is an interesting game. It works on some levels. There's some great mechanical components. The card system, which works good. The battle system for combat works good as well. There are some things that don't work, or some things that don't feel like Skyrim. As I said, not being able to make certain types of equipment, whereas you can make basic ones, but not advanced ones. And even though you've got the skill to make, you know, you've got the smithing skill, you can't make anything better than what you already have. It does give you a benefit. If you have the smithing skill, when you go to upgrade, you get to draw 2 cards. Whoop-de-doo, you can spend a resource to get an extra card, and then another resource to get an extra card. It doesn't feel that significant, if you know what I'm saying. The world is open, the adventure is different every time, kind of. Remembering the story just gets lost like it does in the original Skyrim. There are lots of things to do, there are lots of things that you can fail on, lots of things that you succeed on, but you always progress through the story, which is a good thing. You're not going to be wiped out like in 10 minutes of Arkham Horror, or wait 4 hours and then be wiped out by Cthulhu in Arkham Horror. This game just keeps you going and keeps you going. You keep building or failing at this and doing something else over here, and it feels good, but it's repetitive. It's move, roll, move, roll, move, roll. And after a while, and as I said, I've invested somewhere between 20-29 hours in this game. I'm kind of burnt out on it now. It's just like, it doesn't feel like Skyrim. You know, should I get an expansion? Is it worth me getting an expansion? It would be nice to have a few extra monsters to fight, different monsters to fight, especially at the beginning of the game. I know that there's some legendary monsters that can be added to the monster encounter decks as you go into dungeons. But it's like, yeah, I want it now. I want this now. I want to see some kind of consequences, which I'm not seeing at the moment from the story or from the events that happen, apart from threat tokens being added. And then you can't see where they are on the board because they're the same color as the board. As I said in my first impressions, there are problems with the components, which hence they are replaced with other resources that I've stolen from other games. But the game works. If you're a Skyrim fan and you can hack doing the same thing over and over again and leveling up your character and creating this wonderful heroic person, then yeah, this is a game for you. But be prepared to get bored pretty quickly. Well, not pretty quickly. After you've learnt the game, you may get bored eventually. I was just hoping that there was something else in this base version of the game and I wouldn't have to buy an expansion to make it interesting or to make the Wandering Monsters stand out on the board, for example. I mean, it would have been nice to have some standing tokens for the arrow so I could see where it was. It's 3D kind of thing on this flat board, which the board looks gorgeous. I was very impressed with the look of the board. Again, there's some space that is wasted because you're going to need to put these somewhere, and there's a space on the board. And when you get the special rules from your mission, where does this card go? Does it just fly around? No, there should be a space on the board for that as well, which is a shame. And again, the blades that you haven't saved. Where did you just put this deck? You put. Oh, I shouldn't look at it really. I'm not cheating at all. No, I'm not cheating at all. But yeah, where do you put this? It should be a space for it on the board somewhere. But there is space and you can just plonk it on the board. I've finished now. Thank you for getting to the end of the video, and hopefully I've pointed you in the direction whether Skyrim, the adventure game, is a game for you or not. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you know someone that this game might interest, share this video with them. And if not, then it doesn't matter. Just remember to play nice with each other, and I will see you around in another video at some stage. Ciao for now.
Just sitting at the table next to Felicia.